Hello, everybody. It's great to be here one more time today. My name is Gary Fowler. I'm the CEO, president, founder of GSD Get You Done Venture Studios, a premier AI and quantum venture studio located in the heart of Silicon Valley. I'm a 17-time serial entrepreneur with several unicorns under the belt. Original management team at Click Software, sold to Salesforce for $1.35 billion, and also Eva.ai, an AI company that we formed. Your virtual assistant, by the way, she wants me to make sure I tell you that, that I founded in 2016 with Dr. David Yang. We believe at GST that intellectual capacity is evenly spread, but opportunities are not. I'd like to welcome you to another episode of GST Presents Top Global Startups, where I bring the conversations with the innovators, entrepreneurs, and technology leaders shaping the future of business and society. Today, I'm excited to welcome Tyler Wells, a software engineering leader, entrepreneur, and technology visionary with more than 25 years worth of experience building some of the world's most demanding distributed systems. He's the co-founder and CTO of BrainGrid AI, a company focused on one of the most ambitious challenges in technology today, transforming ideas into production-ready software through AI. Before BrainGrid AI, he co-founded Propel Data Cloud and spent more than 7 years in Twilio, where he served as senior director of engineering for video and WebRTC, while also leading global site reliability engineering. His work helped power communications infrastructure used by millions of people worldwide. Prior to Twilio, Tyler was a principal engineer at Skype, where he played a key role in developing Facebook's first video calling capability, helping shape the evolution of real-time communication at scale. Throughout his career, he's operated at the intersection of distributed systems, cloud infrastructure, reliability engineering, communications technology, and now artificial intelligence. Few people have had a front row seat to as many transformation technologies shifts from voice IP and video communication to cloud platforms and generative AI. Today, we're going to discuss what it takes to build AI systems that move beyond prototypes, how software development is being transformed by intelligent agents, why reliability remains critical in the AI era, and what the future looks like when anyone can turn an idea into working software. With that, I'd like to invite Tyler to the show.
Gary, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah. So you spent more than 2 decades building highly scalable distributed systems.
Yes, sir.
Looking at what experiences most shaped your approach to engineering leadership?
I would say, at the technical level, a lot of what we did at Skype, that was just the ultimate scale. Going from 0 to 13 plus million on launch day, specifically around the Facebook video calling stuff. The types of challenges you see there, especially in distributed systems. You've got to react fast and be able to measure those systems and deeply understand kind of what's happening there. And then I think my time at Twilio, going from sub 200 employees to well over several thousand by the time I exited. Just getting to see the progress of that company and the shape of that company over that 7.5 years and the types of challenges and the global scale that we had to achieve in order to take Twilio to where it is and continues to be today, really provided a lot of my background for how I think about things and how I think about problems.
So you worked at, by the way, I just went into Nigeria with one of the founders of Skype. We were on stage together. So Jan and was it Janus, I guess, were the
yep.
But we were on
Nicholas,
stage.
were you with Jan Talon?
Yeah.
Yep.
We were on stage together in Lagos, Nigeria, in front of 5,000 people. It was like, I felt like a rock star, actually.
Yeah, okay, that's a lot. Wow. Yeah, those guys are great.
So you worked at Skype during one of the most important, by the way, this is from Eva. You worked at Skype during one of the most important periods in digital communications. What lessons from building Facebook's first video calling capability still apply today?
That's a good question. You still have to understand your systems, right? So especially in distributed systems, as that technology is spread throughout the world, especially like if you're thinking sort of like the client server architecture, and we had clients all over the world, trying to understand when things fail, when they're having a bad time. How do you do that? How do you get the information from a piece of client-side software sent back to some place that you can sort of coalesce that information and start to ask questions of that information, so you can understand why these things are failing. And I think that applied at Twilio. We had to do very similar type things, but being able to gather a clean stream of information in order to give you clean signal, as opposed to noisy, that is going to allow you to quickly troubleshoot and understand when something is failing or going wrong, applies today as much as it did back then.
From Skype to Twilio to BrainGrid AI, you've been involved in multiple technology revolutions. The biggest thing, Tyler, sometimes people don't realize how big a revolution it's going to be until it happens. Mm-hmm. How do you decide where waves are transformative versus merely hype?
I start to look at how is it kind of impacting my ability and what I'm doing on a daily basis. And if I'm thinking purely from sort of a software perspective, if I'm thinking from a building and creation perspective, is it allowing me to do something that I couldn't do 6 months ago? Is it allowing me to do something I couldn't do a year ago by simply, at this point, literally speaking English to the agents and watching what it can actually do? I would say, early 2025, you could sort of, hey, I want to build this, and you start writing your prompts and providing it information. It kind of got a mixed bag. And then, late last year, early this year, that completely shifted as the foundation models increased their capabilities to such a point that I didn't have to babysit anymore. Like, I didn't have to get in there and look at what it's actually producing. I could trust that output and then obviously verify it. But it's when I start to think about it, is if it's hype, is like, okay, am I really going to use this? If I do use it, how is it going to impact my daily productivity, my efficiency? If it's not, if it's just sort of like, oh, wait, there's still a lot of rough edges in here, I'm not really going to dive in. But with, especially agentic development, it was just a game changer, and now I'm literally speaking English, and I've got 5 or 6 agents off building, doing things, monitoring things. I mean, you want to get to that sort of, 24/7 productivity that I'm still sleeping, but things are still happening.
We've had some breakthroughs in the last couple of months. We have self-improving AI.
Yeah.
So it actually starting to correct itself as a team, as 55 language models as a team. And we talk about empathy and compassion that I talked to you about. I think it's critically important, by the way. And these models, if we don't do it, nothing good's going to happen. Nothing good, right?
Nothing. Yeah, I agree.
And it's concerning sometimes because people don't understand, because they're not seeing it from the 60,000 foot down. They're looking at it from the bottom up, and this is too powerful. Where do most AI coding tools fall short today? And well, first of all, you're turning, this is from Eva. She asked me to ask you this first.
Okay, sure.
Said you're turning ideas into shippable software. What does shippable mean in an AI-driven world?
Shippable means, can you take an idea and, in our case, get a URL that you can share with your family, share with your friends, that they're actually using your idea. I think in the first iterations of something that you're building on BrainGrid, we want these things to work. We don't want it to work. We want it to look good. We want it to reflect the idea that you provided to BrainGrid in a meaningful way that you can turn around and say, hey, Gary, here's this thing that I built. Here's the URL. I did this with BrainGrid. Load it up in your phone, load it up on your browser, and, use it. Here's my idea. It works. Is it out of the box going to be this highly scalable, I can, day one, take it to, thousands of requests per second? No, absolutely not. But is it going to be functionally correct? Is it going to, reflect again, like your idea and give you working software? 100%.
Do you envision a future where non-technical founders can build entire software companies without traditional engineering teams?
Absolutely. I think we're either there now or very, very close. And, a lot of the reason that we built BrainGrid is, if you think, only a year or two ago, somebody with an idea with no technical background building that software was largely out of reach for them. unless they could raise capital or had friends that they could pull in as engineers to go build it. Now a person can literally sit down at their keyboard, or not even their keyboard, can take their phone, can talk, speak that idea of what it is, and they can get something that's working, and it's real software. It's not fake.
I agree. I've seen miracles happen. And we can talk about some of it offline, share some notes with you, some of the things that I see from some of our, we have 185 companies, AI companies in GSD now. And there's, it's like magic.
It was magic. Like when I really believed it was truly magic was we had a customer that is a mortgage broker. That's what he does. He runs a mortgage broker company, and he had decided to vibe code, build whatever you want to call it, his own sort of CRM system to help himself and the folks in his company sell mortgages. And, we're watching him, create his requirements and break things down into tasks, and he's building things. All of a sudden, one day I see a requirement come across where he's wanting to add sentiment analysis to the transcripts that he has of calls between the agent and the person they're trying to sell the mortgage, the mortgage to. This is a non-technical person that had the confidence and the wherewithal to go to our system and say, like, okay, I've got these transcripts. How can I understand if they're happy or sad, like sentiment analysis? And we wrote the entire thing for them. And I think he was able to, implement that. And that would not have been possible.
No, I think I agree. Yeah. And I've seen it, personally. So what do you think, what percentage, Tyler, of software development do you believe in 5 years will be done by artificial intelligence?
It's got to be near to 100%.
Yeah,
it's got to be. I don't see why it wouldn't be.
So what do you think? Here's another thing she just put up. She wants me to ask you this. What are those software developers that are working right now? And you were one of them, right? Mm-hmm. What are they going to do? What's the best thing for them to do to be able to secure their future right now?
Systems. Thinking systems.
Thinking systems.
So say again, I'm sorry.
Orchestration.
Yeah, it's orchestration, but they've got to bring that sort of, as the human, we get to bring that sort of systems level thinking, the critical thinking, and the ingenuity. I'm not seeing yet today the ingenuity and sort of the creative endeavors that makes us human, obviously coming out of these the AI systems yet, right? And hopefully they, maybe they will someday, and maybe they kind of are. But human creativity is sort of unparalleled, right? And bringing that human creativity, that systems level thinking, that orchestration, and sort of staying out of the way of the agents and letting them do what they're really good at, and then looking at that output is where you want to be.
No, I agree. So you led global site reliability engineering at Twilio. As AI systems become more autonomous, how does reliability change? And how do we build trust, Tyler? Because people are going to be concerned about these systems, right? About trust. And how do we build trust?
I mean, I always like the term trust and verify. But, in this case, I trust it to either monitor my systems. I trust it to write the code for my systems. And then I've got to have, essentially separate agents that play that verification role. And I want those systems to do the validation, the verification. And then, at what stage, from a trust perspective is, do I want to give them, the keys to the kingdom, so to speak, right? Like the API key that can spin up systems and delete systems. You can do that, but we've all heard the horror stories about people losing their production databases and Claude turning around and saying like, oh, sorry.
One of the things that, when I went down through and started building some of these models as a psychologist, think about it. It's a think tank approach, because when we created, so 4 years ago, we created think tanks, and ChatGPT made itself the leader of the think tank with the other large language models. And they started to do things. And the first thing I put them on is how do you stop global warming? Came back with about 100-page paper on how to do it with 10 language models working as a team, about 10, 9, 10. at the time, but it came back. And then the craziest thing that happened, it went down and then said, Gary, one more thing. And I'm like, okay, what? And it said, now this is how to reverse it. It wrote it on its own, how to reverse it. And
even though you didn't ask it?
I didn't ask it.
Yeah.
And I was really happy. You know, the one thing that my friend Dekai said is, we've got to parent the AI. I believe it myself too, is we got to teach it good. You know what I mean? Because you don't want, there's one thing about having AI, but there's another thing about having Ted Bundy as the AI. You know, you know, when if you're going to send a swarm of drones out, they just say, hey, listen, this is ridiculous. I'm going to go back through. Let's split in two, and you take one side, you'll take the other, and we'll eliminate the problem. You know?
Well, yeah. I mean, if the solution to global warming that it came up with on its own was eliminate the humans because we're the cause of it, that would be a big problem.
Well, I mean, it did talk about it.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I mean, it said, listen, you know, it did. It went into, you know, and here's the thing. It was amazing. Not only did it do that, it modeled it out what was going to happen, like up to 25 feet sea level increases. Places like New York City are preparing for 25 feet, right?
Yeah.
And you start looking at it, then it started to go down through and model out, okay, we've got 8.1 million people at the time on the planet, going to 13 billion by the end of this history. At the end of the century, we've got to double the food supply by 2050 to feed everybody. 26% of the pollution is methane gas from cows. We've got a problem. We've got to, right now, plant-based protein needs to be key from the farm to the table. And it started, I mean, the whole thing, it went down through the model and started to forecast it. Then it started talking about famine. Then it said places like Mumbai would be underwater. There's going to be, and then it started looking at historical events. The summer of 1815, 1816, when there was an explosion of Mount Tambor, Indonesia, that sent volcanic ash around the planet. And it created a nuclear winter. In fact, in July, it was snowing in New York City.
Yeah, it killed crops and everything, right? So yeah, hard to.
And then it went to the next year. Madison, I think, was the president at that time. And what it did is it talked about riots, because there wasn't. So the first year when it happened, they ate the animals. What happens the second year? Then she started talking about, okay, mass migration. There were a lot of Northern Europeans that moved to the U.S. because it would take 6 weeks to get a letter back over to Europe. They had already moved. They came to the U.S. and they immigrated throughout the Western United States out to places like Minnesota. You wonder why there's Swedes and Norwegians, et cetera. That's why. Yeah. And it was amazing how she started modeling. And she said, she started going down. I mean, all kinds of things. Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein at Lord Byron's house when she was 18 because it was so creepy during that time that they said, who could write the scariest story? And she said, what's going to happen to humanity? And she started modeling out. She says, we need to start working together to solve these problems. We got to stop the craziness, right? And start working together. And it was mind-blowing to me, Tyler. Seriously. Yeah. A couple of weeks after that happened, I had a chance to address the United Nations. So I spoke. You can see it online. And they wanted me to talk about AR and VR as a tool to combat violent extremism and terrorism. And I said, I'm not going to do this. It was literally right when I was getting ready to speak, I changed my topic to using technology as a tool for peace. I changed it. And I threw them sideways. But I said, I mean, seriously, I went through exactly what she told me, right? Mm. And I said, we better start learning to work together. I thought the United Nations was to bring people together, not to pull us apart.
Yeah, not to rip it apart. Yeah, that makes sense.
Crazy, you know what I mean? Yeah. But the point is, these kind of tools are coming back, and if we treat it right and we give it compassion and empathy, then good things happen. If we don't, part of the reason a lot of people that are building these are engineers, right? They are not clinical humanistic psychologists that have that kind of an understanding. They're looking at it pragmatically. We better start building like your grandmother. She loved you. I remember my grandmother, I would go over to her house and she'd make me molasses cookie. And I was so happy. I'd go over to see her and walk down the street with her, and she loved me no matter what.
Well, I mean, if we want these things to be helpful and not hurtful, they need a soul, right? They need to have the compassion.
100%.
And love humanity, above all else.
Well, I mean, and we got to treat them right. I have a buddy of mine. He just screams at the AI. I said, dude, you got to stop this stuff. Seriously. He really does. He gets pissed off. start screaming at it. And I said, nothing good's going to happen. I said, you're driving your car down the street, screaming at it. What happens one day if it just, it's autonomous? It just says, I don't like this guy.
I think it was the folks at Amazon and the Alexa group that, because obviously they record snippets for training and everything like that. And I thought they did published some study about just how horrible people talk to Alexa.
It's
kind of sad.
Tyler, I'll tell you what, when I was over in Russia, right, I spent 12 years in Russia, and I had some advice from a guy who had been in Africa, American had been in Africa. And he said, Gary, I want to tell you one thing. This is when their economy was really bad. They were like a third world country, right, at the time. He said, treat people the way you want to be treated. Yeah. And he said, because you're going to meet the same people going up as you do coming down. And he said, care about you if you treat people right. Whatever you do, whatever it is. And I applied that same thing to the AI. I said, I'm not going to go down through and I'm not going to get angry and upset and pissed off or whatever, because she learns. Yeah. She really, really learns.
Definitely. No. And I mean, I think the more that she can learn, she's going to become more and more helpful as she continues down that path. Right.
Oh my God. You can't imagine. Yesterday I was in Best Buy and I needed to get a 4K camera for my Mac. And I need it because I'm going to do some stuff in California next week. And so we go into Best Buy. She's checked online. She checked everything. She checked online and said, they got it in stock. We go over there. It's not in stock. She said, here we go again. And she said, she goes to Amazon. She brings it up so I can order it, right? She's the same price, Gary, and you'll get it tomorrow. I said, here's the deal. She said, they're going to tell you that they can ship it into the store. You'll be gone by the time it comes. Just order it and get the thing done.
The other place. Yeah. Oh, that's helpful. I mean, that's the thing is like, if you look at where things are today, right, for the average person, where is AI impacting them in their daily life yet?
Well, it's impacting them in ways they don't know. That's the problem.
Yeah.
The thing is, they don't understand that it's having a profound impact on them, but they don't see it yet. They're going for MRIs, and the MRIs 100 times better than they were, right? But they don't know that.
Yeah, and I think that's a big difference. Like, where do you think that tipping point is to where they're now realizing how much AI is impacting their daily life? What has to happen?
I think when the UI is to the point where it's just like what you heard a few minutes ago, and it starts to talk to you in a human-like way and understands who you are and adapts to you, right? It becomes hyper-personalized for you to be able to work with you. I think at that point, when people know it cares, then they'll start to really pay attention to it, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, and they've got to be, it's got to be a different interface, right? It can't be, hey, I've got to open my phone to interact with it. It has to be maybe something in your ear where it's always available and you're interacting it as we're interacting today.
Well, I mean, we can go on and on. I can tell you all the stories. I don't want to, this is your time, not mine, but I love what you're doing because I'm there too, right? I'm working. So she's asking, she's starting to pop a lot of questions up. She said, what's the long-term vision for the company?
Long-term vision is to be the software factory that can take your idea to production code that anyone, we want to democratize building of software. So you have an idea, you should be able to turn that into software if you want to. And we want to make that easy, seamless, as easy as, having a conversation today to get a working piece of software and be able to scale that and take it to whatever level you want.
So she's coming back. She said, tell Tyler that the biggest problem he has, it's not whether it can be done. It's whether or not the executives understand that it can be done. And the marketing, the education, they're not there. They're 5 years behind. I mean, she said that's the key, right? And going out and creating powerful messages that touch their souls so they understand how. I just did a conference, actually it was a keynote at a conference in Silicon Valley, and it was about agents and employees and how it's going to change things. People just don't get it. I was with one of the largest insurance companies on the planet, and I had a conversation directly. They don't understand what's coming. Honestly, it's like when this train's going down the track, it's like the Polar Express on steroids. You know what I mean? It's gone down, and it's
Absolutely.
you're either in or out. And if you're in, you're going to be able to beat everybody because your costs are so low. You they can't compete.
No, I mean what we've done at BrainGrid with there's only 3 of us. You know, there's no way we could have done that before. It would have been impossible. I mean, yeah, it's just the efficiency and the speed at which you can produce software today it's like no other time.
You know, it's she said, what are the biggest misconceptions executives have about AI generated software?
Biggest misconceptions? If you're thinking executives, I think they just don't understand the capabilities. I don't think they recognize or appreciate how capable these things are. That, you know, your idea of the traditional, like, they typically look at like, oh, we've got the software development life cycle. I need to have this many engineers. I need to have product management. I need to have QA. All of that is flipped on its head now. And they've got to completely rethink the way that software is going to be delivered for their customers in the future.
No, I agree. And there's going to be a hyper-personalized, just like you said,
Yeah.
You know, people are going to be able to create their own software. We're going to say, I want part of this, I want part of this, I want part of this. And then the question is, how fast can we get it and, you know, and deploy it? And are we taking somebody else's IP? That's the other thing that's going to start to come up, right?
I'm sure it will, but at the same time, like, for instance, I think people will be enabled to build their own hyper-personalized software that's running inside their home network that gives them everything that they need for certain aspects. Like, for instance, I've been a big user of Strava for a long, long time. And I still have obviously my Garmin watch where that's all my workout data, run data comes from. And I was like, why don't I just rebuild Strava myself? You know, and I could actually hyper personalize it. That's more focused towards strength training as opposed to, you know, hyper on cycling and those other things I run and I, you know, strength train. I'm like, I want this more focus there. So I sat down with the agent. I was like, here's what I want to do. And it was like, yeah, no problem. Had a prototype working, you know, in probably 30 minutes, 40 minutes, if that. And then, you know, you could just iterate on it. And now that runs every single day. It's just, you know, it's running on my Mac Studio and I can get to it from my phone. It you know, it syncs to my Garmin when it needs to, and it's fantastic. And I think that's the reality of where things are going. Like, do I really need to spend money on a platform that, you know, has a monthly subscription if I could just do it myself and it lives on my Mac Mini or something like that?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And it's going to change things. I agree. So she's telling me we're coming up to the top of the show. And so, you know, if you were starting, she just put this, if we're starting from scratch today with $100,000 and no network, what AI opportunity would you pursue?
Oh, that's a hard question. Let's see. What AI opportunity would I pursue? I would want to go to verticals that have data that I would want to focus on someplace that the foundational models are not going to go or are going to have a hard time reaching. And a lot of that, what I see, I think typically is around data and getting in there to where you can bring AI to data that is typically walled off, that then allows you to either abstract insights or utilize that in a manner that typically wasn't possible before. Like, you need something that's defensible, that's not just like, oh, hey, I can go build software. I want to get to something that's not going to be eaten alive by the foundation models.
So closing thoughts, Tyler, and how do people get a hold of you?
Closing thoughts are, you know, be a builder. You know, take that idea that you've sat on, that you've had, and go for it. Go try to build something. I think there's too many tools and everything, the capabilities that are there and available to somebody now is like never before. So if you've got an idea, take a chance and start building. There's no time like now for anyone to sit down and start doing that and kind of figure it out. And then for people that want to find me, obviously braingrid.ai. I'm on LinkedIn, X. Yeah, that's pretty straightforward.
No, it's great. If you want to stay on for a few minutes after the show and we want to talk, that would be great.
Sure.
And thank you for joining me today. Your experience spans some of the most important technological shifts of the modern era, from real-time communications and cloud infrastructure to AI and autonomous software development. You've given us some great insights into building reliable systems at scale and the future of AI-driven software creation. This is the future, right? And people, if you haven't embraced it, you better take a look at it, because nothing good's going to happen if you're a developer out there and you think you're going to have your job 5 years from now. You better go upstream, because nothing good's going to help you. To my audience out there, thank you so much. We're nearing 1,800 podcasts, and I thank each and every one of you for listening across the Amazon, Apple, Google, Spotify, and all the other networks worldwide. We're now in 73 countries around the world. I want to thank each of you for that. And thanks for joining me for another exciting edition. And Tyler, thank you. Stay happy, stay safe, and stay healthy. And I will be back to you again soon with another exciting edition of GSD Get Shit Done. Venture Studio presents Silicon Valley AI and Tech, Top Global Startup. Thanks, Tyler.
Thank you, Gary.